Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to Let's Create the Revolution Together, a podcast about creating new ways to embody ourselves as human. If you're here, you're probably well aware of all the shifts that are happening on our planet. Maybe you go with the flow with those changes, or maybe you're struggling to find who you truly are. Either way, this space right here is for you. My name is Marigold Era. I'm an Ayurvedic wellness coach, a spiritual life coach, and a podcaster. I am here to guide you through this reality that we can call the Earth School. I strongly believe that we are here to create new ways to show up as individual and as collective, and that every experience that we encounter is an opportunity to grow and evolve. So grab yourself something to drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's jump right into the next episode. Hello, my beautiful beings. Today on Let's Create the Revolution, we're doing something a little different. So we're not going to listen to someone's story, but we're going to dig a little deeper into what's the impact of creativity on the brain. So we're going to have a guest today that's going to talk about that with me. Her name is Velia Hernandez. You may have seen her in another video that we did together, a podcast on how to communicate with your animal. She also has a background with neuroscience, and we started to talk about the creativity and how it was like showing up in the world, like actually, and what it means. And so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna just do something a little different, dig a little deeper. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Velia.
Hi, Marigold. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. I'm very excited about this episode. It's going to be very fun and a good way to move forward in that revolution.
I agree. I'm very excited to talk about this.
Amazing. So let's begin by defining some terms, right? So that people are just like on the same page, because we want to talk about creativity and brain and education and all that stuff. And so let's define stuff so we're on the same page. So let's begin with creativity, what it is.
Okay. So, creativity is essentially the use of imagination to generate or produce an authentic, original, and unpredictable idea and outcome, including anything verbal, visual, auditory, and any sensational and or physical expression or communication. So this can be innovations that can be tangible, so something we touch, taste, and see. It can be also non-tangible, including stimulation of the senses, something we hear, smell, think, or even just imagine. And then it can also be a physical expression, including strategic planning in sports and in gaming, or even riding a horse, where you have to creatively manipulate where the horse goes. And so also being creative with playing, even just being silly in movement. This is all creativity. And so, on a more scientific level, creativity is a very complex cognitive function that simultaneously utilizes various intelligence of the nervous system, which can include both the left and the right side of the brain and the entire body. And it utilizes all of this intelligence to monitor, analyze, perform critical thinking skills, problem solving, inhibition, attentional control, various forms of memory and coordination, and that's just to name a few of the intelligences that we use. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it actually uses all parts of the brain when we are creative. And it just really depends on the task, but you can utilize all parts of the brain. The other thing that creativity is it's driven by emotion and emotional components. This includes passion, desire, playfulness, wondrous, and that's just to name a few. A calmness, a neutrality as well. The opposing emotions or emotional components that inhibit creativity are emotions such as fear or lack of trust.
Yeah.
Emotional components would be judgment or
Mm.
rejection, and impatience. And,
Right.
and so creativity is so authentic that the outcome and or innovation can be completely unpredictable to other humans, or even an AI. And I
Mm.
do bring up artificial intelligence because the biological nervous system, that performs algorithms. That's what it does. It predicts outcomes of human behavior, other human behaviors, and what's happening around in the world around us. And that's exactly the same algorithms that AI uses. And
Mm.
so, however, because of the consciousness of each human and animal creativeness is something so unique to where it can be completely unpredictable. So that is creativity.
That's amazing. It's way larger than what we are learning is creativity when we're in school and we have to draw something with the tree and the house and and
Right.
so
Right.
we've learned that creativity is like to be an artist, to be like something in that area. And I feel like I've always felt like it was actually something way bigger. And I love how you explained it because it just covers it very well, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely more than what we were told it is, and it's utilized in so many various ways, can be utilized in so many various ways.
Yeah. All right. The other term we wanted to touch on today was the rewiring of the brain.
Yes, the rewiring of the brain. The technical term is called neuroplasticity,
Mm.
and what that means is that it's a change in the neurochemical coding and connection within the nervous system. It's not just the brain, but within the entire nervous system. And
Mm.
this is done simply by thinking or doing something different. So, this can be anything from changing your routine, such as taking a different route to work or to the grocery store, or even just learning something new, such as learning to brush your teeth with the opposite hand that you normally are used to brushing your teeth with. So, anytime we do something that is different from our regular routine, or learn something new, we are rewiring, or what I think is a more accurate term, we are recoding the nervous system.
Hmm.
And so I believe that recoding the nervous system is a much better accurate term because of the purpose of the nervous system and the process that it goes through to
Hmm.
make these changes. So we have to keep in mind that the nervous system is a self-directed, intelligent organism. And what that means is that it can function on its own. It doesn't
Hmm.
need our help to function, and it
Yeah.
knows what it needs to do without our help. So it is an intelligent organism, and it is comprised of two organs, the neurons and the brain. And it helps connect the brain to the entire rest of the body, all the other organs. And so the other thing about the nervous system is that it is a very efficient and intelligent communication system. And so our entire biological system's purpose or existence, and even growth, depends on reciprocated communication. And so what I mean by reciprocated communication is that we experience this on a conscious level between society. So, for instance, if we are to send a text message to someone,
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of sending a message is to receive a response back. If we don't receive a response back in most cases, you will start to go through a thought process of, well, did my text go through, or is there something wrong with my phone, or maybe there's something wrong with their phone. And the longer we don't hear from them, whether it's in the text or in person or through email, if we don't get a response back, we then go down thought process of, are they mad at me? Are they okay? So the whole purpose of communicating is to receive a response back, a responsive interaction
Hmm.
back from, based on the message that you sent to them. And that's what the nervous system does. It communicates with other parts of the body, and it it has a need and a purpose to receive responsive interaction of chemical communication and messaging from various parts of the body. So it does communicate via chemicals. And so
Hmm.
when we think of doing, when we think or do something that is different, we, and when I say we, our consciousness becomes another party in that communication system. So
Hmm.
now we have three parties, three members of the party. We have the nervous system, the body, and the consciousness. And so the nerve, and so when the consciousness does step in and communicate, such as when we do something different, we are sending a message to the nervous system to allow us to manipulate the body and the brain. And it's
Hmm.
this back and forth chemical communication that drives the neurons to literally reach out to each other. They crawl and they stretch out to each other, whether it's localized on one part of the brain, or it's across the brain, or across the entire body. They That communication, that chemical messaging is what drives the creation of pathways and the synaptic connection. And
Hmm.
or if the pathway is already there, it can, that chemical communication can deepen that neural synaptic connection, if it's already established. So, in
Hmm.
addition, there are nervous systems within nervous systems in our body. So we have proof that the gastrointestinal tract has a nervous system itself, and the heart has a nervous system itself, and that's just what we know so far. So I'm sure we're going to find out more the more research.
Yeah.
So there is reciprocated communication between different nervous systems and throughout the entire body. And
Hmm.
so a neural recoding within the nervous system is what is really occurring when we are rewiring the brain, because uh,
Hmm.
we are recoding chemical reactions within the neurons. And this is to allow communication uh, between different chemical messages, or to form different chemical messages, so that way you can carry out the different tasks that you are doing. And so the more we practice a different action or activity, the faster the nervous system will learn the new chemical code. and
Hmm.
and therefore it will deepen the neural connection, which will result in quicker chemical reactions, which we will see, and it will manifest by becoming quicker and more accurate at that task that we're doing.
Hmm.
And so we have the ability to recode our nervous system, and in order to improve our overall well-being, we also have the ability to recode our nervous system in order to feel unfulfilled. We have the
Hmm.
ability to do both. and
Right.
and so this is where I think creativity has a
Yeah.
major impact on our well-being, because it helps us regulate the nervous system. And I hope to go into that further today.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. This is just amazing. Oh my God. I have like so much stuff to do to say about it. Um, I think it's just amazing how powerful we are in that when we see it that way. As you said, we can either choose to keep on doing something the same way and maybe getting it to that place where we're feeling unfulfilled, or we can tap into that creativity and just like move forward and evolve and like change those those link in the brain, and in the nervous system. And so I feel like this is so amazing. The other point we wanted to define very like quickly was the term science, because right now I kind of want to ask my listener to just stay open and because science has it has a deeper meaning that what we're um, getting these days. And so I just wanted to tap in just shortly into what science is so that people can actually just keep their mind open to
Yeah.
what we're talking about today.
Perfect. Perfect. So science is technically is supposed to be an unbiased systematic study of how the world works around us.
Right.
It is not supposed to be dogmatic. Therefore, it's not supposed to be biased. If it's dogmatic, then it is biased. And science, since the probably the 30s or the 40s, maybe even earlier than that, it has become more of a religion now, where if a phenomenon has been observed by someone and hasn't been proven in science yet, then it's completely dismissed.
Yeah.
And in reality, the scientific method, the first step in the scientific method is to observe in order to
Mhm.
hypothesize what we're experiencing. So we have to observe first. And it's almost as if now, if it hasn't been proven, then our observations are shut down immediately. And when so yeah, when it should be an exploration, it should be unbiased, it should be open-minded, just like you said, and it should be creative as well.
Yes. Yes. Scientific people for me, they're in my mind, they're very creative people, very open minded, very like trying to understand deeper and like like always trying to dig deeper into like what it actually is.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about how many nervous system we have, and the way you're saying that we're gonna probably discover there's so many more,
Yeah.
and I think that science needs to get back to that openness you
Right.
know
Right. Yeah, I think that's the main reason why science has been so why it's upset so many people. Many people are not, they are not for the biases. We are already seeing that in the medical industry, as
right.
far as there's something called fat biases,
Hmm.
where many doctors are training their students to perceive their clients and their patients as fat and lazy, and that's not the case. And so there's this arrogance that's established in the establishment. And when I say the establishment, I am talking about the people at top, not the hardworking nurses, not the hardworking medics, or even the students. But
Hmm.
there's some control in the establishment that holds this arrogance that we've seen repeatedly throughout history when it comes to diagnosing and misdiagnosing. For example, the deaf and mute, they were once diagnosed as dumb,
Yeah.
because there was this arrogance, just because they couldn't explain it. It was dismissed
Yes.
and just labeled as dumb, and
Yeah.
that's not the case.
Yeah, it's funny how we actually know about that. Even right now, we know that it has evolved.
Mhm.
Like it's science, medical system, or anything. It's not the same than it was like 100 years ago. But somehow, like we are believing right now that it's not gonna evolve more, which is way absurd. It's just
Yeah,
absurd for me because of course it's gonna keep on like evolving. We're all evolving every day. So
so that's right. Yes, that's right.
all right. So now that we're all on the same page with the creativity, what it means, rewiring or recoding the brain,
Mhm.
and the open mind that we need to have regarding to science, we wanted to go a little deeper into education and how the creativity has an impact on kids. And as some of you may know, I'm an unschooling mother, and education of the children is something very dear to my heart. And so with Velia, we were talking about that, and we're like, oh, yeah, let's jump into that subject because it's so important. They're the next generation in that revolution. They're very important, and we need to support them no matter how it shows up. And so that's why we wanted to talk a little bit more about the brain, the creativity, and the impact that it has on our kids.
On child development.
Yes.
Perfect. So what I can see is that just based on how the nervous system works and how society, how the child development works, it goes back to that reciprocated communication. So just like the nervous system lives and desires and has this need to have communication with other parts of the body, so do children, and starting with infants, starting with children who aren't even born yet.
Right.
So they have to feel like someone is communicating back to them. In the psychological studies, this is called serve and receive, I believe. Serve and return. Sorry, it's called serve and return. And really, I think reciprocated communication is much better because as a better term, because it can actually be understood in the way we communicate, just like the text message example I just gave. So when children are infants and they are trying to communicate that they're hungry or that their diaper needs to be changed, all they can do is really pretty much just fidget uncontrollably, and sometimes controllably, but most of the time it's uncontrollably. And then they can vocalize. That's it. That's all they can do. And so it's up to what actually establishes the brain architecture for the child is that a caretaker or the parent is going to respond to them. So obviously we know, okay, when a baby cries, we need to feed them or we need to change their diaper. But when they're simply sitting there and they're just cooing, right, and they're making vocal noises, they are being creative in trying to manipulate you to interact.
Yes.
And they are playing with that. Sometimes they don't have control, but they learn over and over again how to control it. What noises can I make? And then not only that, the parent ends up interacting, and this goes back to eye contact too.
Right. I remember like my little babies, just doing like that. And then you just go ahead and do it with them, and they feel so like happy at that moment. They're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, they're like,
so fun. Yay.
Yeah, they're like, I got you to do it. I got you to do it. And so that is so important to their well-being, including the architecture of their nervous system and the brain. And so the reason why this is so important is because the nervous system, again, it needs, whether it's their visual or their auditory, their entire biological system needs to see that someone is interacting with them and is going to interact with them, even if it's playfulness. Yes. It's not just about the medical needs either. It's all works together. So when children are when the baby becomes a little bit older and they're able to point, this is always really fun, because when sometimes they will point at something and they're not pointing at anything, but they're just trying to get you to look. And when you look and you just play along with them, that as well, what that communicates to them is that you are worth me being conscious to.
Yes.
You are worth me being conscious to you, turning around and playing with you and acknowledging you and acknowledging that you're pointing, even though, I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to say that you're not pointing at anything. I'm going to pay attention to you and I'm going to play along. So this builds the child's confidence. This builds their self-esteem. This builds their self-worth in existing. Yeah. And so it's that reciprocated communication, and it's through creativity that they are getting you to do that with.
Yeah, definitely. And I can speak on the experience of that. And I remember my kids doing those things, and me, like for me, when I was a young mother, when I was younger, it was all about intuition.
And so I was always super creative. And so when I was a young mother, I never opened a book. I never looked on the internet how to do it, how to feed them, how to, like whatever. I was just like always super in tune with my intuition. And so it was natural to me to look at what they were pointing, or uh, just like say those sounds with them, or just like touch them, or be in communication with them. It was very natural and instinctive,
Right.
and I can see how they are so confident. And I'm not saying it especially because of that, but it's all of those little moments where I'm actually acknowledging the way they're communicating or the way they're learning,
Right.
and I can see how confident they are. Like, and even sometimes it's confronting for me because I wasn't raised like that, and sometimes I'm still having those part of myself where I'm not in that super strong, confident
Mhm.
self, right? And so when my kids are in that self confidence that they've created,
Yeah.
because I was creating something with them, and
Right.
they don't have the baggage that I have. And sometimes they're so confident and they were just going to tell me, you know, how it is,
Yeah.
and I'm like, all right, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. We created that together. I
That's
remember. All right, let's go.
awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. And it does build their confidence. And what confidence is actually it's an emotional component. And what I mean by
Mm,
that is that multiple emotions make it up. So everything we do is driven by emotions. Every Most behaviors we have has an underlying emotion below it. And so when we turn around and communicate, um, bring them into consciousness, bring
yes.
the fact that they want to interact, that they have a desire to interact, or that they have a desire to be creative in a different way. um, when we do that, we are turning around and we're energetically communicating to them that you and your desires are worthy of me looking at, being
Yes.
conscious to, and honoring. And
Yes.
so that's what builds our overall well-being is and happiness and
Yeah.
fulfillment is being conscious to being, being acknowledged. Whether it's, for children, it has to be their caretaker, but that even goes into adults, which I hope we can talk about later.
Oh yeah, we will for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. I love that. I mean, the other thing that I'm observing is the more that I've done that, as much as I've done that in the past, by me doing that and like acknowledging their ways of communicating, um, it teaches them how to do the same for themselves.
That's right. That's
All
right.
right. So it creates something for them, as they're learning how to acknowledge themselves. And so that builds their confidence as well. It just has that ripple effect of like, I'm doing something from creativity that is inspiring for them, and by respecting who they are, and they're all like super different. And I can speak about my both my daughters. I have one that is very much like in the intellectual world, and she was even when she was younger, and my other is more into the physical, like stunt woman kind of person. And so when my youngest daughter, when she was very young, the way she was communicating was very physical. All right. And so if she didn't want to have someone to approach her, she was like very clear on like, this is not going to happen. Even she was like 3 months old. It was very like strong no, right?
Yeah.
And me as a mother, it was like my role to respect that, to
Yeah.
not push her, to not like push her to interact with someone that doesn't feel right for her, even though she's only 3 months old.
That's
It
right.
doesn't matter. It's like you were saying, they're pointing at something, and even though you don't see it,
Mhm.
if you acknowledge that, it's going to build them the confidence they need to thrive in their lives. And so I can see that even right now, like she's like, if she doesn't want someone in her field, like she's going to be very strong about it. And it's like so strong, maybe because we actually nurture that like she has like she can protect herself. Like she's like, no one will enter, you know. It's just like we
Right.
can see, okay, you're not in the mood, that's all right, you know,
Yeah.
like go
That
with your emotion and we're gonna come back later, right?
Yeah, and that is so important. That is so important. I think that's amazing that you said that that happened at 3 months old,
Yeah.
because the child development literature says that we don't really establish our autonomy. The children don't establish their autonomy until they are three, somewhere between 2 and 3 years old. And I think that's amazing that if we give our children the opportunity and show them earlier that you're not just a child. You're not just something I tell you what to do. You're not just something that I ignore you when I'm doing adult things. You are a human living being, and you are absolutely worth my full and undivided attention.
Yes.
No matter what it is, and that I respect whatever your desires and emotions are. That is what will probably accelerate the development of a child.
Yeah,
And
that's what I think too. That's
yeah,
what I've observed anyway, because I was so for my listener, I was always working with kids since I was like in my 20s. Even when I was 12, like I was babysitting, So
yeah,
I always was in contact with kids. And I can see now as a mother that when we're acknowledging who they are, no matter
mhm,
what it is, it's gonna like I don't know, like propulse them, like it's gonna shoot them into something they truly are. And all the science, which I've learned as well in my studies, like I was in special eds and in psychosociology, so I've seen the children development psychology. And now that I'm a mother, like most of those things are like made like very vague guideline,
yeah,
right? And
yes,
so since they're all different, and when we just like encourage them to develop that, those guidelines are very like blurry, because they're really not the same. My youngest daughter, she was like climbing the stairs and she was like 5 months old.
wow,
So,
yeah,
like, and she still climbs everywhere.
right, right,
So it's in her gene, I guess. I don't know. It's like in her interest anyway, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
my other daughter, she was always like very calm, sitting down with her dolls and creating universe, like very mentally, like this doll, she came with this dress and she's gonna keep that dress,
right,
like she was
right,
like, it was very pragmatic the way she was playing. Okay.
right,
So it was, and she's still like this to this day.
yeah,
So her games have evolved, but
right,
she's playing exactly the same way. And so
wow, awesome,
so she's like pushing it forwards and she's like evolving and expanding, but she keeps her ground into
yeah,
like what makes sense for her. And
yes,
I'm really like, it's fascinating how those what we've learned in school regarding this the children development,
mhm,
it's it can be true,
mhm, mhm,
and also
not
it
true.
can also not be true.
That's right. That's right. It's not to be taken as a matter of fact. You're right.
Yes,
It's a
it's not
guideline.
set in stone. Yes,
It's
it's just
not
a
in stone.
guideline.
That's right. And I think that's interesting because I mean there's a lot that you said that's interesting, and that the fact that you're turning around and acknowledging their desires, their creativity, their need to crawl the stairs when they want to, that just shows how much you respect them as a living being.
Yes.
And that right there is what supports their growth. And so I just think that's amazing. And they will model that for themselves, because they already model everything we do. And
Yes.
me coming from a family where I had a father who developed paranoid schizophrenia
Mm-hmm.
in front of me, I watched it develop over the course of 20 years. Um, that's not what I had. That's what I ended up modeling was his anxiety behaviors, and that's what caused a delay in my development.
Yeah.
And yet, if we had that support as children, we have infinite potential to where we could grow. We don't even understand it yet. We don't
Yes.
even know. That's why we're doing studies on on the nervous system still and on the brain, because we don't understand how it works. And so, if we provide the environmental support that they actually need, which is emotional attention. It's so funny because in the science of neglect and child abuse, they have the main forms of abuse, and that's physical, sexual, and medical neglect. But every single one of those encompass emotional neglect, and yet
Mm.
they don't have a category for emotional neglect. And
Yes.
so when we are attending to not only their physical needs, but also their emotional needs, and being conscious to their desires, being conscious to their passions, their wondrous, their playfulness, we are emotionally supporting them. And so that's how they model that within themselves. So when they feel, man, I don't feel like studying right now. I don't feel like learning this right now. I want to go and move, or I want to go and focus on this. And
Yeah.
we tell them, no, you need to sit down and study this. What happens is that they end up teaching themselves that, okay, my needs don't matter.
Exactly.
My needs don't matter. Therefore, the nervous system will end up understanding that, getting an energetic message that basically I need to continue sending stress chemicals because this is
Yes.
overwhelming me and I'm not meeting my needs. So I'm
Hmm.
going to keep sending that until the desire, the passions are met. Then the chemicals will come in.
Yeah. That's where, like, as parent, that's where, like, curiosity is such a great tool, because when, like, I can speak on my experience, but I remember lately, it was like, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago, or even like a month ago, or something like very, like, it wasn't long ago. So my daughter wanted to learn how to knit,
Oh yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so I was like, all right, so I know how to knit, so I'm gonna teach you how to knit, right? And then I was coming from my box of, like, I've learned this like that from my grandmother, right? She told me this is how we knit. And
Right.
so my daughter was like, thank you, but I would rather learn it like this. And I was like, all right. I had to take a moment and, like, all right, that's right. She's right. She wants to learn it in a certain way. So let's be curious about that. Let's be, like, open-minded to her needs, to how she is wanting to learn that skill. And then she learned it really quickly, and she started to knit in a way that was like her own ways. And I just, like, provided the base of
Mhm.
that, like, the first how you do the first knot and the first, like, row. And then she was like, all right, let's go in my way now. And
That's
so she was just, like, evolving through this learning
yeah.
with her at her own pace, first of all. And she felt supported, because I could have been, no, this is not the way we learn how to knit, this is the way we learn how to knit.
Right.
I could have been super closed up and not acknowledging the way she wants to learn it.
Right.
And so she would have, like, brought those chemical that is their stress chemical.
Right.
They're saying, I don't have the right to exist, I have to
Yes.
go comply, I have to do it like she did, like
Yeah.
she says, and then, like, it's like they're closing up.
Yes.
and
And
and I yeah, let's go.
go ahead. Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to say that because we were talking about child development a while ago. They talk about the autonomy stage, which happens around 2 years old, right? And the autonomy stage is very important as far as saying
Yes.
what I want to do. It defines our own independence. It
Yes.
strengthens our own independence, and so we see that in children when it comes to being able to uh, be able to hold and release their bowel movements. And that's where it first manifests, usually,
Mm,
at least in the books, that's what they say.
yes.
That's a very powerful, independent position to be in, and we will see this when we age and we lose the ability to do this on our own,
Mm,
and we have to depend on someone else to help us. It becomes very humbling. It becomes very stressful for us. So having
mm.
the ability to say no, I don't want to do it that way, and that be honored, I mean, that is just amazing. That is what will fulfill a person's life. And not only that, you're not putting them in this box that they have to learn it a certain way,
Exactly.
and they can be, that's where the creativity comes in and how they learn it and what comes out of it. And that's where new innovations come from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see that in both my daughters in a different way because, as I said, one is very much in the intellectual realm and the other one is more in the physical realm. And so, but um, they're both very creative, and when we support that, I can see how they light up. It's just like they're just like, "Boop," oh, I have the right to
Yeah.
exist as I am, and so it's just amazing for me to see them, to witness that, to be a part of this, and it's all like experimental, I have to say, right? Because as we were talking, like this way of seeing the children's how they develop, it's kind of one track minded, like, and as I was growing as a mother, like tuning into my intuition, I was like, I know I'm not doing it in the normal way,
Mhm.
but I have to trust that this is the way we need to go and to move forward in my family. It doesn't matter what people think.
Right.
It doesn't matter, like, I have to trust that we're gonna be able to adjust,
Yeah.
to like reframe, to create. And when something doesn't feel right, it's always a matter of like saying it and creating something new.
Yes. Yeah. And
So
that,
to let
absolutely.
that field open, it actually, from what I've understand talking with you, this kind of mindset will rewire their brain,
Mhm.
my brain, my
Right.
husband's brain. So as we're always creating something new, like, oh, so we do the dishes this way, it doesn't feel very aligned, and like people are getting cranky, so let's sit and let's create something new.
Yes, yeah, and that is experimentation. It's so true. Even, even as an experimenter, there are these rules that you have to follow to make it a true experiment. However, when it comes to psychological research, it is impossible, absolutely impossible, to control all of the variables in
Yeah.
psychological research unless you go into unethical grounds.
Right.
And so, when it comes to working with children, as I have worked with children as well, um, the one thing that that really helps and supports my own well-being, to not get stressed out with them as well as their well-being, and to follow my lead, is be flexible in experimenting different ways.
Yes.
Being flexible, I mean, just for example, I remember I felt I was feeling rushed to get a child into a computer room, and they were just not in the mood to really be as rushed as I was, and they were trying to get my attention. They were like, Miss, this is a teenager, and he was like, Miss, he was trying to tell me something about a singer that he liked, and I just realized if I slow down and listen to him and stop and just give him full attention, that's all he needs. And it took about 5 seconds, and that's all
Yes.
it needed. And then he followed me in. It's
Yes.
not about making them do things. It's about
No.
respecting them, and it will become like a dance, uh,
Yes.
like an actual responsive interaction, which is what reciprocated communication is.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. I feel that too. I mean, the minute we acknowledge who they are and consider them as human.
Right. That's right. That's
You
right.
know, like we have the tendency in the society to just like disregard the children's uh, thoughts, feelings, experience. They're just children, but
Right.
it's not true. And the more we're doing that,
Yeah,
the more we are like hurting them in a way, right? And then the
absolutely.
more they're just like clenching down and like that they don't understand who they are. It feels wrong. They don't know how to get back in touch with themselves. And I can really talk about that because my stepdaughter, she was in the school system for so long, and her mother and us, we have two very different ways of raising kids. And so she was raised in a more like, don't cry, it's okay, like it doesn't matter, just eat your stuff and then you're gonna have a dessert, that kind of mentality. And now that she's with us, she's like in a cultural shock,
Yeah,
like for real. Like she's like,
that.
what? First I have choices? Like what the hell am I gonna do with choices? She really, like, she's like freezed. She
Right.
just doesn't know how to make a choice. She
Right.
doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know how to put some boundaries around her. Like my daughters are gonna be like, hey, you want to come and play with this? And then she doesn't know, and she's like, okay, and then she's gonna go, but then it doesn't really feel right, and then she's gonna get frustrated, and then like she's just gonna lash out, and then like she feels very like foreign, like she
Yeah.
feels very like it, like. And it's a process.
Right.
It's a really deep process for her to decondition those part of herself. And she's 11, and so we're at that point where she's like defining who she is more, like the preteen years, like, and it's it's getting trickier than when, like, as I started this with my kids when they were born, right? So they were always like raised in that culture. And so rewiring this thing with my stepdaughter is a whole other game. It's something else, something new that I have to keep open to have, like that curiosity, and that compassion for her and for us
Right.
and for this like disconnect.
Right.
And yeah, so that rewiring of the brain, I think it's very interesting that we can actually go there by changing our habits,
Yeah. Absolutely. And so what it sounds like is that since she came in from this environment that denied her opinion, denied her thoughts, denied her perspective, now that she's in this one, you're absolutely right. It's like a cultural shock. And
Yeah.
she really is probably freezing because she's overwhelmed with
Yes.
the probably not just the fact that she has choices, but the amount of choices she has too.
Right.
And so this can be probably very overwhelming for her. So her nervous system is definitely her baseline as far as stress is definitely up higher than the other two girls that were raised from day one in this kind of
Yeah.
environment. And so yeah, it probably is going to take time. It's very interesting. It's just so interesting. I'm so happy that you're doing that for her because I'm curious as to how quickly she's gonna start to just run with it and just be like,
Yes.
okay, I'm gonna do this. I get to make my choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
it's really a matter of choices, because at that age she has to make that decision for herself.
Yeah,
And we were just talking about that yesterday. We were like on the porch, and I was like, if you want to go down the pool, like touch the bottom, like I have to let you. Are you okay with that? Because I keep going back and trying to pull her out of the water, and then like telling her, you got the choice. You don't have to stay there, right? And then I'm just like pulling her out of there and like sitting with her and like trying to understand her. And yesterday I was like, I cannot do it like that. So are you okay if I'm actually letting you go to the end of that experience. I'm going to be there. And if you need something, I'll be there. But you got to step up and ask for it. And
Right.
I'm going to let you go. And when you touch that bottom, when you're at the end of that pool, you just push yourself. You just
Right.
like, you just like push yourself, and you're going to get your oxygen by
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah.
without me trying to always like pull you and get you to breathe,
Right. That's right.
like, so it's always like a matter of keeping that openness, you
Yes.
know
Yes.
with everyone.
So yeah, when it comes to coming from a routine, right? Her routine
Yes.
was you got to do it a certain way. You have to, you have to be told you are not allowed to make decisions. So I'm going to make them for you.
Right.
So she becomes in an automatic process.
Yes.
And this is something that many adults, including myself, has been in, and we have been conditioned to be in automatic processes. And what that means is that she is learning how to, rather than allowing the subconscious to communicate with the nervous system, which is what would normally happen in a place where she was told what to do, how to eat, how to dress, whatever it is, how to do a homework, how to learn. Instead of the subconscious communicating with the nervous system, now the consciousness is stepping in.
Yes.
And this is what we are. This is the conscious is what holds who we are and all of
Mm.
our desires, and our ability to grow. And so she is now stepping into conscious processing by living in your home,
Yes.
which is something that a lot of adults are stuck in. We're very much
Yes.
stuck in the automatic processes where this is just the go, go, go. I need to get this done. I need to get this. I need to go to work. I need to pay my bills. I need to go home and cook. And we don't sit down to take time out to be creative or find peace,
Yes.
or find relaxation, find playfulness.
Yes.
And when we don't allow that, then our stress levels remain at a high baseline, a higher
Mm.
baseline than what it actually needs to be. And we can bring that baseline down by learning how to be creative, learning how to relax outside of drinking, outside of watching, sitting in front of the TV and scrolling through our phones, because that actually overstimulates the nervous system even more.
Yes.
And so including myself, because I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, I am right now, even at 42 years old, trying to learn how to be playful, how to be creative. I'm
Yeah.
still learning this, and it's
Yeah.
not easy. And it's more about learning how to let go of what's familiar, which is what is safe for us.
Yeah.
So I have known that stress is very familiar to me. And
Mm.
that has been developed into a safety net pretty much.
Yes.
And now I'm just learning to let go. And it's that uncertainty, not having any judgment, letting go of
Yeah.
the outcome,
Yeah.
and just being okay with whatever the outcome is, and not having judgment or rejection. That's where we can go more into that openness and that creativity and find fulfillment.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I was exactly saying that. Well, in my words, with my stepdaughter yesterday. And I was just telling her, it's all right if you need to go really deep into like what feels yucky, or like it feels wrong, or, like you want to watch TV for like 3 months. Go ahead, do that, do
Yeah.
that until like you want to throw up. So,
Yes.
like you really don't like it anymore, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, how are you so accepting? How are you so able to accept that I can actually go there? And I was like, because I trust that there's going to be a moment where you're going to wake up and see the world differently. And if you don't, I'm going to still love you. It's going to be okay, right? It doesn't really matter the outcome.
Right.
It You just got to go ahead and experience that for yourself.
That's right.
And so she was like, What? What? But to have someone to support you, even in those moments that are so harsh,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
have someone and that emotional neglect that you were talking earlier,
Mhm.
it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal in our brain development, because and it's kind of sad that it's overlooked because it
Mhm.
has a really, like, I've always felt like I was neglected, but my
Yeah.
parents are like, why? Like, you were always like under my roof, you had like clothes, you had food, you had like
Mhm.
friends, you had everything. And I was
Right.
like, I didn't have the emotional support, and I was always like, like the person that everybody is comparing to, like, to not to do
Mhm.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
And just like, so I was that thing just was so harsh for me to go through every day, that it's exactly how you say it. It's just like you go through something every day and it becomes your reality. It becomes your safety net. It becomes, so I like, throughout my high school years, I was always rejecting myself from any groups because this is what I've learned. Like, my emotion, the way I was, it wasn't allowed, it wasn't respected, it wasn't acknowledged.
Mhm.
So I was always rejecting myself, and I had no friends, and I was like always like in the corner by myself, like
Yeah.
and it was very painful until that moment where I actually chose to not do that anymore. And it was
Wow.
like a one, like, it was triggered by my mother's death, and
Mhm.
we didn't have a really good relationship. And for me, that moment felt like I was free,
Yeah.
and I was like, all right, so I don't have to go there anymore. I don't, like, you cannot reject me anymore. You
Mhm.
cannot, like, not acknowledge who I am. And so I'm gonna just do what I want and just go there, go into that pool and go really deep, as deep as I need, and trust that I'm going to come back stronger, wiser, different, more creative. And it's going to be, that's it, like that. I just, it was, it was a moment of empowerment. And I, like, if you ask people around me, they wouldn't say that I was in my power at all, because I was doing all kinds of things that are considered wrong, but I
Right.
needed to do them because I needed to rewire that stuff. And you're not always going to do that in the most glorious way,
Mhm.
but
Right.
it doesn't really matter.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. I think that's so important. I When it comes to emotional neglect, it's so interesting that it is overlooked when it's a component that's in every single one of form of abuse, even in adult abuse. You're emotionally
Yes.
neglecting them, and it's so interesting that even with the reciprocated communication, you could have reciprocated communication with an infant, with a toddler, and yet still emotionally neglect them,
Yes.
by because of conforming to societal rules. And the way um, I grew up watching adults looking at me as if I was less than because I was a child and I
Right.
wasn't allowed to be in adult conversations or
Hmm.
wherever adult conversations were having, as if you were talking about something inappropriate all the time. It's so weird. and so it was interesting that even the most, I ended up being exposed to a lot of heroin addicts. A lot of my friends had heroin addicts as parents, and
Really?
I would go into their homes and I would see all the drugs and paraphernalia lying around, but I didn't understand what was going on. And my friends would even tell me, oh, they're doing heroin. And I'm like, okay. And what was amazing is that those parents that were heroin addicts, not all of them, but most of them actually acknowledged me as a child and would
Hmm.
say, hi, Velia, how are you doing? They would
Hmm.
ask me how I was doing. They would ask me how school was going.
Hmm.
And compared to a sober parent, I met so many sober parents that wouldn't even acknowledge my existence.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter how, it doesn't matter that the child has the shelter, that the child, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it does to a
To an
degree, but
extent, yeah.
to an extent, right? But you can have emotional neglect in the most perfect environment, as far as physical needs being met, medical needs being met, having the best schooling,
Yeah.
having the funds, whatever it is, having two parents. You can still have emotional neglect
Yes.
within the home. So I think
Yeah.
that's interesting, and it, and
That's
it
very
really,
interesting.
yeah, and it really boils down to, let's to unschooling. I like how you said it. You said one time, I have to unschool myself. We
Yes.
have to be unschooled, or recoded within our nervous system on how to perceive what is going on in this world, as far
Yeah.
as what our kids are doing. We create these rules, these societal rules, that they have to do. They have to go to school, they have to learn a certain thing by a certain age, which isn't true. It just isn't true. They all, every single one of us, as adults, even as children, we just want inner peace. We just
Yeah.
want peace of mind, and we want to
Yes.
feel good. That is what our nervous system strives for, to feel
Yeah.
good, and to feel relaxed and accepted and loved, so we can be loving back to others.
Yes.
And the truth is that when I go into, when as a child, when I went into these heroin addict homes, and I went into these very religious people's homes that didn't even acknowledge me, yet were sober, it they didn't know how they were emotionally, like, neglecting themselves,
Yeah.
and they didn't know how, because they were emotionally neglected by their parents.
Yeah. That's like the circle,
The
the
cycle. That's what.
cycle, the circle, that keeps turning and turning. And you just got to step outside of that wheel.
Yes. Yes.
And that
Absolutely.
you're stepping outside that wheel with creativity. I feel like if you're not in that creative state of mind, you're never going to step outside that wheel. And I remember when I was working in daycare, and like the kids that at a very very young age, like the routine was like set up, like you come in and you got like your snack and we're gonna go outside, and it was the same every day. And I was like, this is bringing them a false sense of security,
Hmm.
because the minute something will shift, they're
Hmm.
gonna be like, they want to understand what's going on.
Right.
And so I feel like the whole thing with the school system, and I'm not like, I used to be very angry at the school system, and now I'm more like, like I'm not angry anymore, but I see that stuff in that system needs to be different.
Yeah. Right.
And then that routine, that every day is the same, and that you're conditioning yourself as a kid, because, well, it feels like they don't have a choice. It
Yeah.
feels like they don't have the choice. And if you let them know that they have the choice, it's just like it brings back their creativity. And
Right.
I've seen that because my oldest daughter, was actually going to school. She went for 2 months when she was in second grade, because she wanted to see for herself if I was telling the truth about the school system. And I was like, all right, let's go, you know? And so she went for 2 months. And after 2 months, she was like, yeah, this is depressing. Like, I'm very sad suddenly. We're doing the same thing every day. It was kind of exciting at the beginning, but after 2 months, it's like, so what? It's always the same thing. We're always like coming in at the same time and doing the same thing and having our snack at the same time and like being silent. And she was like, I'm done with it. And so we went into the school, in the classroom, to explain, because the teacher somehow asked us like if we were open to say goodbye to the classmates. And I was like, all right. And my daughter was like, I'm kind of shy to do it by myself. Can you do it? Can you come with me? And I was like, all right. So we went in front of the class and we told those kids that Liana's gonna step outside the school system, and that she was never really into that school system, but she wanted to try it out, and she did for 2 months, and now she wants to go back to unschooling. And you saw those kids were like,
Yeah.
she's not gonna go to school anymore. Like, we can actually do that. And then like it's just like everyone was like raising their hand. Can she do that? Is she gonna be able to do that? And I was like, yes, yes, yes. And if I wasn't going to school, could I just play video game all day? Yes. What? You know, it was like a whole thing, like chaos. And the teacher were like, oh, what the hell did I just do? Why did I say yes to that? And then
That was so funny.
at daycare, it was chaos throughout the day. Like, it was in the morning, and the whole day was like chaos. And like people, like at the end of our presentation, the whole classroom just like gather around Lugana, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna miss you. It was so fun to meet you." And they were giving her their phone numbers. And later on, this week, I just like crossed path with the educator in the street randomly, and she was like, "You guys created such chaos in the school, and like no one wanted to come into school anymore,
Oh my
and they were all like playing and not respecting the rules, and they were wanting to be unschooled." And I was like,
funny. Oh my god.
"Yeah." They're wonderful like that, kids. You just gotta let them open those doors, and they're gonna get that creative part super quickly. You
That's
know,
right.
like they're gonna get it like super quickly. And it was like I don't know, it was like a wave of like, creativity. And like I will remember that moment for my whole life for sure, man. Those kids were like so beautiful and like light up, and it was just like so cute to see them all like understanding that they didn't have to, that they were not, that there was another option.
Another
That
option. Yeah. Another way of living.
yeah,
And I think the fear of that, because of the conditioning that we have, the fear
yeah,
comes in that, well, then what kind of child are they going to grow up to be if they're playing video games all day? But the truth is that if we teach our children how to acknowledge their emotions by us acknowledging them and their emotions and their desires and passions, eventually, after playing games for 3 to 6 months on and on, they will feel unfulfilled,
yes,
unless there's something else coming out of that.
yes, exactly.
So because there are connections that are made in games. Now you can play with in gaming, you can play with people across the world, you can make
Yeah,
friends, you can even make
yes,
money off of it.
yeah,
So they will feel unfulfilled because they already know how to turn around and listen to their own passions. Um,
exactly,
Eventually, they will get another spark of, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I want to go do
exactly.
this.
Exactly. And you got to trust that they will be. I've seen it. I've seen it so many times. So by now, I'm just riding those waves. And even though sometimes I may feel a little worry
Mhm.
because it will come back, I'm still like, I was still brought up in that system, and I was still like conditioned to think a certain way. And sometimes I can see it coming back, but my kids are always showing me that this is possible. Like my oldest daughter is playing to with a video game, and I was very triggered by that game. And I was like, I feel like it's like a casino, and I feel like, but somehow the more she plays, the more she's talking about like statistics and like the analytics and how that, like, she's got all those. I don't even understand. Like, this is, my brain doesn't work like that. All right. But
Right.
the way she speaks about that game now, she's got like strategies, and like, she's gonna invest in those and do that and like build this one. And then like, I'm not understanding all of it,
Mhm.
but I can see that it's very different from the beginning when it started. If she didn't understand really well that game, and it felt like she was addicted to, like always having the next character, and like she was always like, and she felt very overwhelmed when she was like losing at that game.
Mhm.
And it was a very big trigger for me. And then we talked about it, and then we regulated her time on that game, and so that she can have like time to process. And now that she understands that game very well, she's like, oh my god, it's like talking with someone that does mathematics all the time, and I'm like in that more creative and emotional states, and I'm like, I'm not understanding everything you're saying, but I can see you're very passionate about it, and you find something that is fulfilling yourself.
Right.
And I can get behind that, even though I don't understand mentally everything about the game. I know that she is like, I don't know, like, for me, like my intuition, what it says, it's like she might be able to be like those kind of people that invest like
Yeah.
a lot of money, and like that understand like the risk and the statistics and those kind of stuff. Like she understands everything, and I'm like super overwhelmed by all the information that she's giving me.
She's learning something. I mean, she's
Exactly.
learning a lot. And it's interesting that it's interesting because I remember when I was working with abused children, a lot of them, like I was in charge of a computer room, and they didn't know how to read, and they were already 15.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to read, and for me, it was just like I just ended up telling them, why don't you pull out a song that you like? Um, and most of the songs were inappropriate. And so I was just like, just pull out one that's not too inappropriate. Okay. And pull out one and start reading the lyrics. That's it.
Yes.
You know the song, just start reading the lyrics. And they loved that. They loved just the option of being able to learn in a different way that they're being taught at school.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just so interesting. It's like, as long as they enjoy learning, will they actually retain more information?
Yes.
And as long as they enjoy what they're learning and how they're learning it, will their stress levels be down, which then works with how much information they're going to retain.
Yes.
And then as long as they enjoy learning, will they be able to create different ways and different ideas on what else to learn or how to learn it, and how to do it. And
Yeah.
so that, yeah, I think that's just awesome. That's such a great example as far as working with your triggers and your unschooling with your daughter's gaming. There's a lot to be learned in gaming, and yes, it's true. It's like, for me, I would probably be the same as you. I would be worried, is she going to get addicted to it? But look at what's really happening around us. We have kids with phones that are addicted to social media. Why is that acceptable and this isn't?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I really want to touch also um on how as an adult, because as kids, like I can see, like I know that when the kid is like supported and acknowledged in
Mhm.
the way they are, it will bring out something very great into in them, and then in the world, because they're going to bring that forward into the world.
Mhm.
And as adult, I feel like it's sometimes a little harder, and so because maybe we were more used to those old ways of doing stuff. Like sometimes I will do my morning routine and I'm not even like present, because I'm just doing that same thing every morning, you know?
Right.
And like that, there's like that one part, like when I'm doing my drinks in the morning, that is always the same. And then after that, I'm going to go work out, and then I'm going to go meditate. And that's different every day. But I can see that just this little part of my day, I can do it like my eyes closed, you know. I'm not even like present for that moment. I'm still like,
Right.
a little sleepy. And I remember being in the system when I was in school, doing the same thing every day. And for the most part, I don't even remember. Like it's just like it's so the same every
Mhm.
day. And
Mhm.
so I don't remember it. And so if I don't remember it, it feels like I wasn't really creative
Right.
Because if I was creative, I would remember that, because it has like a feel to it, right? When you're creative, when you're
Right.
creating something, like you will remember that you've created that, it came from you.
Yes. And so in order to be creative, we have to be conscious. And so
Right.
that comes back to, so that, and being conscious is being present.
Yes.
And so that goes back to that reciprocated communication between the conscious, the nervous system, and the body. Is the conscious being present, or is the subconscious communicating to
Yes.
the nervous system? So when we're in automatic processes where we are not present and we're stuck in the same routine, then automatic when we are when we are in automatic processes, the subconscious is what's communicating to the nervous system.
Hmm.
And because the conscious is not participating in that part, in that communication system, the nervous system is not relaxed. The nervous system can only become relaxed when the conscious steps in and starts communicating.
Hmm.
And that's when we use creativity. That's when, so yeah, we have to be conscious to be creative. And that's the only way we can find inner peace, is by being
Hmm.
present. And so creativity really, really helps out with finding inner peace and finding emotional balance, and as well as affecting our overall well-being, and
Right.
providing a very well overall well-being. Whereas adults are just in constant automatic processes. That's where we live the majority of the time, and that's where, that's why mindfulness is becoming so important, and meditation is becoming so important, because we know how much this affects the nervous system. We know that this is what's deteriorating us, and that
Right.
is the only way to inner peace. And creativity helps with finding inner peace, because playfulness is in there, curiosity is in there,
Yes.
the letting go of stress and the outcome, the letting go
Mm.
of it having to be perfect, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is there. And so we can let that go. We reduce the stress.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, because we're so conditioned to that do being perfect, like
Right.
paying the bills, like you said earlier, and like, going to work, and that it's just like it piles up, and then you find it really hard to just like do something else, and it feels like you're putting so much effort in doing those things, going to work, those things that are not like necessarily creative, and that you're doing every day, and you're putting so much effort into that when you're done doing those things, yeah, you're so tired,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and watch some Netflix, because I'm just like so tired. But when you're doing that, I feel like you're kind of killing yourself
Yeah.
in a way.
You absolutely are. You're well, and so we can think of this in different levels. Not only are you killing the nervous system,
Mm,
you're deteriorating it because it's not growing.
yeah.
Its main purpose is to communicate with the consciousness, and that's the only way it can grow. When it's communicating with the subconscious, it's not growing. It's being stunted. And not only that, we're not growing our own emotional well-being, which involves turning around and communicating with our emotions.
Yes.
Whether it's uncomfortable or comfortable emotions, it doesn't matter. If you feel judgment towards yourself because you're trying something new and you're afraid about how you're going to look or what people are going to say, that emotion of judgment, it's actually an emotional component, but that emotion needs to be turned around and, okay, I hear you. You're feeling judged, and I want to respect that. And I just want to acknowledge you. And that's how it becomes processed, is by
Yes.
acknowledging it, being conscious to it. And even our comfortable emotions. If I have, which I do, I always have desires to dance. And that's what I do, is I dance. When I have the desire to dance and I acknowledge it, I feel fulfilled. I
Yeah.
feel like I did something that day that I wanted, and I broke that pattern of routine of just doing, and gave myself the opportunity to dance,
Yeah.
regardless of what anyone thinks of me, even if I'm in public. And so that's where the reduction of stress and finding inner peace comes from. It really does. When we don't allow it, we are deteriorating the nerves, the nervous system, the brain, the body, and our own overall well-being and our self-worth and worthiness of existing.
Yeah. And the more you want to feel comfortable, the more you're activating this instead of building something that will like support you. And so I feel like, well, what I've noticed is I used to work with elder people, elderly, and I remember they were very very much attached to their routine because it was like that since forever,
Yeah.
and I could see that there were some of them that were like stepping outside of that, and they were so fun to talk with. They were like so open to something else, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But when you're living your life, that your whole life in a certain way, it feels too heavy to do something different. It
Yeah.
feels like it was so heavy for them to just like step outside this comfort zone. Um, and so I've always felt like super sad about that. But it made me realize how much it was important to keep that creative side alive, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
That creative side in the way we were talking at the beginning, not like painting, because I used to paint a lot and I used to dance a lot and I used to do all those things. And parts of me thought that it was the way creativity worked.
Hmm.
But now that I'm older and wiser, I'm realizing how it is not just that.
Right.
And that by acknowledging our desire, whether it's to create something like a painting or to just sit your ass down and read a book that you really like to read, and you're just like pushing it away all the time and not like acknowledging you just want to spend an hour in your day reading that book. That's
Mhm.
creative for me. Like that's you stepping up for what you're really wanting to do. You know, you're following that inspired action. And I don't know, I feel like following that inspired action could be, and you can confirm that, but could be a way as an adult to rewire, to recode our nervous system.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think when we break the patterns, even if it's just little bits, when we break the patterns of our routine, we can start stepping into a conscious and into our
Mm.
conscious and actually following what we truly want to do. And you mentioned something, and I wanted to talk on that, and I forgot what it is. Hopefully, I'll remember. But we are definitely rewiring, recoding the nervous system if as adults we allow ourselves to be creative, even when it comes to reading a book. When you were saying that, I was thinking it's almost like creativity is is not necessarily about creating something tangible or non-tangible either, because I had said that in the beginning. It's almost like just creating an experience. That's it. You
Yes.
could just be creating an experience. That's what's unique about the consciousness, is
Mm.
that we have the ability to create different experiences, and
Yes.
um, it could just be a weird, a goofy movement for a second, and that's it. As you're walking from your desk to the bathroom, like
Yeah.
that's all it needs to be, and that's it. That can actually release chemicals. It can release stuck chemicals. It can release other chemicals that bring in calmness and playfulness. So
Yeah.
that's all it really requires, is just a simple movement or desire to make a sound or do something, or
Yeah.
even read a book, or whatever it is that you're desiring and have a passion to do. It could even be just giving yourself the opportunity to become conscious and present while you're drinking water. You are creating an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel it can be anything. And I related to what you're saying about like just walking. Like I can see myself do that often. Like I would just walk and then pass in front of one of my daughter and just do something that is crazy.
Yes.
That doesn't have meaning. That's just like funny. Like yesterday I was singing a song, a really stupid song that we used to listen when we were in high school. And my youngest daughter was like, "What is that song?" And then I looked it up on the internet and I actually found it. And we listened to that song, that stupid song. Like, it's just like so stupid. And we listened to that song 4 times in a row and we were like crying because it was so funny. We were laughing so loud and we slept so good that like yesterday. I was like,
Yes.
yes,
That
let's.
that's what it's about. That's so awesome. Yeah, so y'all created a moment of laughter, a
Yes,
memory, basically.
yes. And now
Um,
it's gonna be just a little wink, like when either of us feels down, we can just like go, like just say that little
yeah,
sentence, that little stupid sentence in that song, and then it's just gonna spark something back, right? And just
absolutely.
like get back in touch with that side of like being just silly.
And that would be the recoding. So you would have, okay, let's see if I can explain this. You have a moment that you created using a song, and now, and because y'all laughed for so long, it made such an imprint, a code within your nervous system, that now if you just repeat a sentence, or even a word from that song, you already both know what that is, and it will probably automatically, those same chemical reactions will be elicited of laughter and just
Yeah.
giggle, a gigglesome. So that
Yes.
would be the recoding, is just from that simple experience. That's awesome.
Yeah, just thinking about that experience we had yesterday, I want to laugh because
Yeah,
it was just so stupid and funny.
I bet. I bet it sounds amazing. It sounds so funny.
And I feel like that's the blessing our kids are bringing into our lives because they can access that super quickly, right? They're super good at just having fun. My
Yeah.
my my youngest daughter is like she's such a gift for that. She will just like walk and just like see me and she does that little dance and then she's just gonna move on, and it's just that. And I'm
That's
like, oh, this is so funny.
Yeah, that's all we need. Like, just having that could really uplift you throughout the day and regulate your nervous system back to homeostasis. And that's all we want. We just want to
Yes.
feel good and feel at peace. And
Yeah.
and that's what we live for. And we cannot get that by doing and constantly doing the same routine.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's very inspiring to hear, because I've been trying to do that myself with my husband. It's like, if I walk by him, we do the same thing all the time. We just ask each other, how's it going? How's it going? It's really, maybe if I did something else, even if it's just a silly movement or a silly face, that
Yeah.
that is what brings fulfillment to the relationship too, not only to
Yes.
yourself, but to the relationship.
Right. Yes, it can improve our relationship for sure. And oh yeah, I mean, like we do that to with my husband as well. Like he will do something very inappropriate just to make me laugh,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then we're just like, all right, let's play. It's just silly. It's
right.
just silly. And sometimes we can go like into deep conversation, like where we're changing the whole world. And then sometimes we're just gonna just fart in front of each other and just laugh about it,
That's right. Yeah, that's awesome. And that is truly beautiful. Like, that's what it's all about. I mean, the way I look at it is that the only reason, a lot of the reason why we have regrets and guilt and grief, when we lose a family member, is
Mm,
because we weren't present enough. We
yes.
weren't, we didn't have a fulfilling relationship. And the only way to fulfill it is by being conscious and being
Yes.
playful, not,
Yes.
not arguing, not stressing about how to pay the bills and how to live, not sitting in front of the TV. That doesn't really allow you to create a memory with them. It's just creating a memory with the TV or the
Yeah.
screen. But
Yes.
actually, again, that reciprocated communication of interaction, even if it's just imaginative.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I feel like I just feel like this is such a big part of creating a revolution, because when we're accessing this creativity, that's where the changes are happening. And when the changes are happening, that's how we're shifting that. Like, even though we can see that the energy is shifting right now on the planet, even though we can observe that, we still have a part to play. We're not just passively observing that and magically it's going to show up and everything's going to be perfect and magical.
Right.
And I feel like um the way we're showing up in the world is going to make that shift. It's not
Yes.
just going to be like, oh, it's a shift, and we have to move forward into our better version, the better version of ourselves. And by getting in touch with that creativity, that's one way, because I feel like there are so many ways, but this is one way to spark something new, something different.
Yes.
And the more we're in touch with that creative side, the more the shift is going to happen quicker. I feel it's going to happen like
I agree.
faster, and like I feel like it's going to be a ripple effect of. And so I feel like it's very, very, very important to get back in touch with our creative side, no matter how it looks. How we were just saying, like, it can be very silly, or it can be like super, like a big project that you want to like birth into the world. It doesn't matter how it shows up,
Right.
but yeah, like it's one way to spark something. And when we're doing it, it's like when our with our kids, like when I'm being there for them and understanding them and acknowledging them, it's it's creating something within them. And as adult, I feel like it's the same thing. If I'm moving forward and doing something that is very creative, very important for me, and that I'm bringing that forward, it's going to have that same effect on the people that I meet.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly like our kids. It's just like with our kids, we have this special bond, like it's, I feel like it's happening quicker and faster with our kids because we're always together. Like, they come from you. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But when we meet other beings, adult beings, and they can acknowledge that you're doing something that is very creative, very out there, very very aligned, it's just like, oh, right. Yeah, that's amazing. I can also do that. I can
Right.
also like be in that creative state. Look at her, look at him, how they look, it looks awesome, it looks fascinating, it looks inspiring, it looks whatever you want it to look.
Yes. Yes. It can, so you can create inspiration just by being creative within yourself and just being and showing up in the world that way.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you. It sounds like there is a ripple effect to it. Um,
yeah,
and it's pretty amazing. I think it's much more, it's a bigger function that we have that is overlooked. And
yes,
I think we need to pay more attention to it.
yeah. We don't realize, like, we can understand, like, I often hear people saying that we're powerful, right? Like, we're powerful, but how it shows up and how can we actually touch that? Like, how can we make that tangible? Like, it's easy to say we're powerful,
Right. Right.
but it's like when you start to embody that, that's where the changes happen. It's not just by saying, oh, I'm powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
And as you said earlier, you're powerful either way, with like whether it's to destruct stuff or to
Mhm.
create stuff.
That's
So it's your choice, it's your pick,
yeah.
right? It's just like, if you're telling yourself you're powerful and you're not creating stuff, well, you might as well just destroy stuff, right? You're
Right.
going to be powerful in that other sense.
Yes, in the other direction. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love that. I love that. Your kids are very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Absolutely lucky to have you. Like, that is just amazing. That must bring so much love, fulfillment, joy, and just playfulness and openness and acceptance. And man, that is just something that I've been fighting for 42 years to find.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And then finally we just have to find it within ourselves, you know.
exactly.
And so I really love how your knowledge can actually support what I'm doing, because as I said, I'm acting from intuition. So I'm not a scientific. I didn't know most of what you were saying before we were talking. It's kind of like I kind of knew, but I couldn't say anything about it because I didn't have like the knowledge.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's amazing to have you here right now and support with your knowledge my experience. And I always say that whatever experience you encounter, it's a way for you to learn something, you know. And that every experience is an opportunity to grow and to evolve. And that's part of the way I am creative.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for supporting with your knowledge my intuition.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing a lot of insight too. Like I think it's just amazing some of the stories that you shared. It is unbelievable. We have no idea the potential of children and their actual development and the human itself. We're not even close to understanding it. We
I
have
know.
so much to learn, and I'm just amazed that you're doing this, and I think it's awesome. I think you're gonna see results um, that defy what we know about child development. I believe so.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
so much
think
for doing that.
thank you. So, what advice could we give to our listener to finish this podcast? What would be an advice you would give them regarding creativity, education, whatever your intuition is telling you to say?
So I think I would say that it really, I think it's very important to learn how to listen to the emotions, how to listen not necessarily to the thoughts, but to the emotions that are behind the thoughts. So I think it's very important to give yourself the opportunity to somehow get in touch with the energy of our emotions, whether it is through play, whether it is through creativity, whether it is through silliness, um, and or whether it's through meditation or a combination of all of them. um, we have to be able to break the thought patterns that we are stuck in, and become conscious to how we truly feel.
Hmm.
And I think the quickest way to do that is by doing something different each day. Each day, just even if it's just a second long and a silly expression, doing something different each day when you're, going to work or going to the grocery store or walking from your desk to the restroom. Um, Doing that will break a pattern. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I have to meditate for this long, I have to do it this way, I have to, I have to do shadow work or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily have to start with that. I'm not saying that those won't help eventually, and that they won't be helpful to incorporate them, but we can become overwhelmed from that too.
Yes.
The need to do it a certain way. So I would say just what I've learned from this podcast, it just sounds like taking advantage of allowing yourself to do something spontaneous,
Hmm.
without judging it, whether it's alone or in front of other people. It doesn't matter. Allow yourself to do something each day, and I think we will get closer to breaking the thought patterns of being in automatic processes, and that will get us closer to um, releasing emotions of calmness and acceptance, and or at least neutrality, to where we can start listening to
Hmm.
what emotions and passions and desires we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Velia. That was amazing.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. So wonderful to hear about your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you.